Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jane Hammons, and my co-presenter is Renee Kiner, and we are here to give our webinar, Introduction to the ACRL Framework Sandbox. As was mentioned, this webinar has been sponsored by the ACRL Instruction Section, and Renee and I are both members of the Instruction Section's Sandbox Framework for Information Literacy Sandbox. And so we are here to provide you all with an introduction to the Sandbox. It's great to have everyone here. We saw in the chat, some folks were posting where they're from, where they work. If you feel comfortable doing that, we would love to hear more. It's really great to see. We've got people from all over the country here today with us. So good afternoon for those of you that are this afternoon. If it's still morning for you, good morning to you as well. It's a very chilly, cold day here in Columbus, Ohio, where I am. So hopefully it is a little bit more sunny for some of you out there today. We'll go ahead and jump in. We'd like to just take a minute to check and see how everyone is doing today. So we've put some options up here on the screen for you all, ranging from a sleepy sloth to a curious cat, busy beaver, annoyed antelope, or maybe a happy hippo, or maybe a hungry hippo at this time of day. So if you feel comfortable and like to post into the chat how you are doing today, we would love to hear that. And we'll give everyone just a few seconds to respond. So I see we're getting a lot of different responses. It's great to see. Curious cat, sleepy sloth, curious cat, sleepy sloth. Looks like a lot of folks out there are maybe a little bit sleepy today. That's completely understandable. Happy hippo, curious cat, happy hungry hippo. Yeah, I can see definitely both of those. Hungry hippo, curious cat, busy beaver. So some folks are out there pretty busy. Thankfully, a few folks have picked annoyed, but not too many. So thankfully, it looks like everyone is in an okay mood. If you are annoyed, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully it will get better for you today. Sleepy sloth, busy. Great. Thank you all so much for sharing how you're doing today. We hope that you will enjoy our webinar and go away, hopefully with some ideas for how you might be able to use the Sandbox in your work. So we'll go ahead then and jump in and just briefly introduce ourselves again. So my name is Jane Hammons, and I am the Teaching and Learning Engagement Librarian at The Ohio State University. Renee, I'll pass it over to you.
I am Renee Kiner. I'm a public services librarian at the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg.
Thank you. And we just want to briefly mention the third member of our group who's not able to present today, but Elizabeth Camper, who's the information literacy librarian at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, was also an important member in putting this presentation together today. So we would like to hear a little bit about your previous experience using the Sandbox. So we have two questions here. Have you ever searched the Sandbox for instructional materials? Have you ever uploaded an item to the Sandbox? So you could answer just yes to no, both to no, one yes, two no, however you would like to do that in the chat. If you feel comfortable just answering that, just indicating really quickly in the chat what your previous experience with the Sandbox is, we would love to hear that. See lots of folks coming in saying no to both, mentioning fully new to the Sandbox. That is wonderful. A few folks saying yes, that they've looked at the Sandbox before, but haven't really uploaded anything, which is great as well. No to both. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for sharing your experience. It's really helpful to us to know how many folks have some experience working with the Sandbox or not. If you don't have any experience, that is great. This is intended to be an entirely introductory webinar. So no experience needed. We do hope that everyone will leave today, though, with a better idea of how the sandbox might be useful to them. So specifically, that is what our agenda is. We want to introduce everyone to the sandbox, so give you a chance to learn about the purpose, the structure of the framework sandbox, think a little bit about how you might be able to use the sandbox to support you in your teaching and in your professional development. We will give everyone a chance to explore the sandbox. Hopefully you might leave with 1 or 2 resources that you think would be helpful to you in your teaching practice. And we'll give you a chance also to think about why you might want to consider contributing to the sandbox. We won't spend a lot of time on contributing today. That's really the focus of our webinar on Wednesday, which is the second part of this webinar that's intended for folks that are a little bit more experienced users. And we'll talk about considering why you should contribute to the sandbox in that webinar. But we will also just briefly mention it at the end of our webinar here today. All right, so we'll go ahead and go forward. I'm going to check the chat to see if there's anything. Okay, great. So if you do have any questions or comments as we're going through, please feel free to go ahead and put those into the chat. And we're going to go ahead and hand it over to Renee.
Thank you. So we're going to learn a little bit about the sandbox, like what is the sandbox? So do I have, oh, thank you. So the sandbox allows for searching, browsing, and contributing to a repository of materials related to the ACRL framework, and it serves as a resource for librarians seeking to engage the framework in their instructional practice by providing access to materials created by those in the field. So again, what is that? So basically, the sandbox is a database that allows you to go and search for materials that you might want to use if you are looking for an idea or a lesson plan. Sorry about that. Or a lesson plan. It's very bad timing. I'm very sorry. And I can't turn it off. So it serves, so basically it's a database that you're going to be able to go and look for information that will be helpful to you. It is not stopping.
Would you like me to take over on this slide?
It just stopped.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so actually I'll just have you move to the next slide. So what it is that you're going to be able to discover ways that you can incorporate the framework and information literacy into your instruction. So you can also share activities as well as find activities and teaching resources. And you'll be able to identify others that in the field that might be working on something that you are interested in. So for myself, as an example, my colleague and I are doing a lot about plagiarism. And so I had used the Sandbox to see if anybody else was doing some things about plagiarism. And actually there's some interesting things out there. So I just, as you can see in this little screen here, you can see that there's a search bar, and all I did was type in plagiarism and some things came up. So it's very intuitive and easy to use. So the next slide.
Sorry, just to interrupt really quickly, Renee. Some folks are saying that they're needing a password to access, which you should not need a password to access. Mm-hmm. Is anyone else getting that message? I can, let me make sure I'm sharing the right link. I will stop sharing for just 1 second to make sure that we've got the right link in there. All right, I think we should be ready for you to go ahead, Renee.
Okay, I was actually going to answer one of the questions that asked about like Creative Commons. Mm-hmm. And there is actually a spot for that. It'll tell you. So, and when we go through, that we have a little video, it should talk a little bit about that. But if it doesn't, we can show you when we do a little brief on how to use the sandbox. Okay, so on the next slide, this talks a little bit about what's in the sandbox. So as you can see, there's all kinds of types of resources. You can download activities, there's assessment material, conference presentations, lesson plans, you can read here. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of great information in there. And your search options, like I was saying before, I had just typed in plagiarism because that was just what I was looking for. And I wanted to see if anybody else had anything in the sandbox, and they did. So you can search by keyword, which is really easy. Or there's drop downs where you can browse by resource type. So if you're looking specifically for a frame, like information has value, you can just do a drop down and click right on that, and anything that talks about information has value will show up. There's also disciplines, so whether it's humanities, the sciences, type of institution. So if you're looking specifically for something for community college, that's in here. The scope, and then license assigned. So you can also see if you're looking for something totally open that you can just take, or if you're looking for something that you can take and adapt. So all that information is in there. And then the next slide just has some of our statistics. As of when we just took this information, which wasn't that long ago, there was 298 resources in there and 415 contributors. The top frame is authority is constructed and contextual. And the top resources were activities and learning objectives.
So we just wanted to highlight just a few examples of some of the resources that are in there. So you can get an idea of the range of different types of resources, the range of audiences. So this is one resource that will actually be featured in the upcoming issue of the instruction section newsletter, a resource that was developed intended for students as a workshop or an activity that you can do with students to help them better understand algorithms and how algorithms shape their online searching experiences and how their own online behaviors shape their results, and then reflect on the influence of algorithms in their search process. This is, as I mentioned, a resource that was intended directly for use with students, but there are also resources in there that are intended for other librarians. So this one, for example, is a resource where this library uploaded examples of rubrics that they had developed based on the different concepts from the ACRL framework. And so you can go in there, you can see that each rubric addresses one of the specific frames and incorporates the knowledge, practices, and dispositions there. So that's the type of material that you might find that's intended for the audience of librarians there. You also have resources in there that are intended for working with peers or providing professional development for educators. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for librarians. If you're working with faculty members in other areas, this is an example of a workshop that's intended around for intellectual privacy and relationships between surveillance and inquiry and free expression and all of those. So it has this audience of other professional educators. So we really wanted to highlight those just very briefly to give you an idea that there really is a range of different types of resources that you can find there, a range of different audiences. And one of the things you'll notice is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a resource that is directly about a framework concept. And by that, I mean, it's not like this resource has to be titled, authority is constructed and contextual, and that's what I'm going to be teaching about. But if that lesson plan that you have is tied somehow to one of those concepts, it can still be incorporated. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about teaching people about the framework, but it's about how you are using the framework, how the framework informs the lessons that you're giving, how it's connected to the concepts that you're teaching those students. Those types of resources are appropriate as well to incorporate into the sandbox. So we will take a pause here. And this is the time where if you would like to ask any questions, you can do that. We'd also encourage you to just reflect a little bit based on what you've just learned about the sandbox, how you might use the sandbox to support your own teaching or professional development. If you feel comfortable sharing something in the chat at this point, we'd love to hear what you might be thinking about the sandbox, especially those of you that are completely new to it. So we'll just pause here for a minute to see if there are any questions, comments, things that folks would like to share before we move on.
Someone did ask about the overlap between the sandbox and Project Cora. And I've been on this committee for less than a year. But what I'll say, and then Jane, I'll, if you want to jump in, it depends. I mean, we do not coordinate with Project Cora, but if somebody is uploading their information to both Project Cora and the Sandbox, there would be overlap. So there would be some things there. But as of right now, we are not working together. Is that?
That is correct, as far as I know, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of the focus difference, the Sandbox was really intended, when the ACRL framework came out, as a way for folks to have a chance to learn more about teaching specifically with the framework, those framework concepts. So I think it just has a slightly different focus. But as Renee said, I think it's definitely appropriate if you wanted to upload resources to both or use both as part of your process of looking for instructional resources or materials. Absolutely. Comments in there. Project Cora. Let's see, great way to freshen up after not doing much instruction over the last 2 years. Yes, I think that is a great idea. Time saver, don't have to create resources myself all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of the expertise and the knowledge that librarians across the country have. Folks have created some great resources. And so it's a lot easier than having to develop everything completely from scratch all the time. Sorry, my cat's gonna walk in front. Let's see, other comments. Want to add this to my list of information literacy resources for faculty. I also wanted to use it to get inspiration for instruction sessions. I'd like that as subject specific. Yes, absolutely. I think someone else also mentioned sharing this as a resource with faculty. If your faculty members are interested in thinking about ways that they can incorporate information literacy into their courses, you can definitely share this as a resource with faculty as well. Mm-hmm. This will be very helpful as a newer instructor. Wonderful. Reuse, adapt, inspiration, nice community of practice, sharing professionally. Yes, absolutely. Great. Finding plans for instruction on topics specific to my liaison area. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks. So it's great to hear the ideas that everyone has for how they think that they might use the Sandbox. Alicia shared an awesome reminder of the wide range of resources that can be useful for instructors, like curriculum maps, practitioner reflections. Yes, thank you. All right, so continue to please share ideas or questions that you have, and we'll go ahead and go on and start looking into the Sandbox a little bit more.
Okay, so now that we talked about the Sandbox and what it is and what it holds, we're going to discuss and go through how to actually explore the Sandbox. So we have a little video, a short video, to show that we'll talk a little bit about how to search.
Your own activities and teaching resources related to the framework. The second tab is entitled Resources. Within Resources, you can browse for any type of activity. You can look for a curriculum map, or even look at a list of learning objectives. And maybe you're interested in finding an information literacy framework that needs to be addressed in your lesson plan as a whole, and you can feel free to do that as well. And you can also tell what kind of disciplines that can be associated with that type of resource. You might be looking for art, or you might be looking for history or education, or you might be looking for a type of institution, whether that be a college or a university, as well as a scope and a classroom level or a college level or even a program level. And maybe you're interested in what kind of license is associated with that. And you can see the type of license that's available right here on your screen. And
Okay. So I did get a message that somebody is getting an error when they try to search. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. I don't know if it is a, like so many people are trying it at the same time and it's just kind of, I don't know, hanging up, but it should work. I was just using it this morning. So you might have to try again. And to talk about that, in trying this, we're gonna give you a few minutes to go to the sandbox. I refreshed it. Okay, perfect. So we put the link in the chat. So all you have to do is click on that. We're going to give you 5 minutes to just go ahead and enter a topic or search however you would like, and just identify a source that you think that you might potentially use, and you can put it into the chat and let us know.
So it's just turned 2:23 now, so we'll give you 5 minutes from now. And you can post resources anytime throughout that period if you find something that's interesting to you. Give everyone a chance to, if you haven't had a chance to yet, go ahead and post a link to a resource that you found helpful. If you have any questions or comments that came up as you were searching, go ahead and post those as well. We're getting some really cool responses from things that people really liked. So we have, let's see, Rebecca highlighted a cool slide deck on fake science news. Great link there. Some folks were really interested in the integrating citations activity.
There's also one on Zotero that someone pointed out, which is helpful because I'm starting to use Zotero myself.
Anna highlight, I really like that you can limit by license.
And by discipline, that's another one people like.
Yeah.
Peer review toolkit.
So one on reading scientific research. Great infographic to help students determine what types of searches they should be doing. May integrate this into our new systematic review LibGuide, which is wonderful. Avoiding plagiarism, another vote for the reading scientific research, another vote for the peer review toolkit. Identifying research questions in the discipline. Some really great resources that people have highlighted. Wonderful. I think that is really helpful, seeing the different links that everyone put in there, just the range of resources that you can find there. Different kinds of ways that folks have been able to integrate the framework with the work that they are doing as librarians. So please feel free to go ahead and continue sharing, and we'll go ahead and move forward.
So the next slide is really just asking, how did you find the process of navigating the sandbox? Was it easy? Did you have any issues? So if you just want to post A through D, you know, to let us know how you felt. If anybody felt it was very complicated, like if they were going to pick D or even C, if you can let us know why, because we can always take that information back to the committee. In case something is confusing, but yeah, you can always just let us know. We would appreciate it. So most people are saying super easy or fairly easy, which is good. Okay. Yeah, so it seems like most people think that it's fairly easy. And like I said, if anybody did have issues, you can always just send one of us a direct message and we'll be happy to take some of the information back. The helpful feedback.
So So we did have one comment in there. I would like more results on each page.
Okay.
So I was weary to try too many drop-down boxes and limit my results too much. And Kara shared the next version of the Sandbox is currently being designed. So this is a great time to be able to share some responses. Yeah, great. So we did want to talk again, just very briefly about why you want to think about contributing to the Sandbox. And then if you are interested in contributing, we highly encourage you to attend the webinar on Wednesday. We will talk more about going through the process of contributing and making those decisions about how you upload your resources. So why do you want to contribute? We know that you all have great ideas, you have great experience, you've developed fantastic lesson plans, your libraries, you've developed learning outcomes, you've developed tutorials and resources. We know that there's so many great resources out there. And so the more that you can share, the more that we can build the Sandbox up into a really fantastic repository for all librarians who are interested in teaching, information literacy, the framework. So we would love to see more and more folks add their resources into the Sandbox. This is a great way to, especially if you're in a position where you don't really have your own instructional repository or you don't have a great place to store your instructional materials. This is a place where you can upload and create your own kind of curated list of your own repositories. Here's the resources that I want to highlight that I'm really proud of. This is the lesson plans that I've had that have gone great. So that you can have those and be able to share those with others. Folks had mentioned sharing resources with the faculty in your area. If you upload a resource, this is a way that you can easily link resources to faculty in your area as well, that you have created and uploaded yourself. And then of course, it's just important to contribute to our profession and help advance teaching practices, help folks learn more about the framework and how to teach with the framework. I know that in my position, one of our stated goals in our role is to show that we are, making a national contribution, that we are supporting our profession. And so this is a great way for you to show that you are doing that when you are sharing your resources. Contributing resources is really easy. We're not going to go into all of the details now. I did want to point out that you do have to register to share your resources. So you don't have to register to search for and to use any of the resources, but you do have to register if you would like to share your resources. It is a really quick and easy process to just create an account. It's basically just name, email, username, password. That's pretty much all you need to do. I really want to highlight that you don't need to be an ACRL member to create an account and share your resources. So we highly recommend that anyone, if you have a great lesson plan, a great idea, please go ahead and share those resources. You will be asked to provide some information for the source that you would like to upload. So a title, description. You can upload different types of links. So you can upload a PDF, a Word document, a slide deck, something like that. So you provide that link so you can update your content. And then it will ask you to go through those questions, identifying what type of resource it is. Is it an activity? Is it a learning outcomes? Is it professional development? The frames that are addressed, and you can have the option to either select, it's applicable to the framework as a whole, or you can identify specific frames that you think are most relevant. You can identify which types of institutions it might work best at. And you also have that option to identify the license that you would like to apply to that. So there's a range of different licenses that, whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of sharing your resources, you can select that for your license. So we'll pause there really quickly. I'm just going to check the chat to see if there are any questions, comments coming in. So my university is almost entirely asynchronous, so I would love the option to filter by modality. So synchronous, asynchronous. That's a great idea. Let's see, we had a question, is there a peer review type process with the resources? So no, there is no peer review in terms of the resources that are uploaded. If you are looking for peer-reviewed instructional resources, the Primo database, that's also by the instruction section, has a peer review process. But in this case, anyone can upload their resources and there's no peer review process. See if there's any questions that we missed here.
Someone was asking about if anybody reviews the sandbox periodically for outdated information.
That is a good question. As far as I know, that has not been done, but I know that we have discussed something similar to that in our meetings. I don't know, Tessa, I think you're here. I don't know if you know that one. Might not be. We currently do not now. So. So Melanie asked, would you consider adding an optional comments and review section? That could be a great way for folks to share how they're using and adapting resources. That is a good idea as well. You can tell, I will say that you can tell how many times a resource has been downloaded. So when you look at a particular resource, you'll see on the side, it will tell you how many downloads it has. Can you delete your items if you updated or it's out of date? Yes, you can. You can go in and edit, delete your materials. Let's see, Anna asked, just curious, sorry if this was already mentioned, how many records resources live in the sandbox? I think it was like 248, I think, on this slide. And I know some have been added since then. So somewhere around 250 resources.
Yeah, I think it was 298. I think it was almost 300.
Okay. So we had some responses here. So how likely it is that you will use the sandbox. So we see lots of A's that have come in, which is really good. Some B's, a few C's, that's okay as well. But lots of A's coming in there. So really great to see those, A, B. Chris shared, could use more STEM sources, and I'm a STEM librarian. Opportunity, absolutely, yes. If you see those missing spots there, please feel free to go ahead and start filling in that gap. So we did want to highlight just a few specific resources. We'll share the link to this presentation and when we're done, and then you'll be able to access all of these links. But we have put together a PDF graphic that tells you how to contribute to the sandbox. We actually just saw that on a previous slide. So that's that PDF graphic there, going through and telling you how to upload your resources. We also encourage folks to hold what we've called like an upload-a-thon. This could be a great sort of time when the folks in your unit or in your library get together and everyone takes some time to go through the sandbox, identify maybe some of those gaps areas that you mentioned, and start uploading resources. So, you know, if you're looking for like a retreat activity to do with your library for this summer, get everyone together, identify some resources, and go ahead and upload those together so that we can continue to build out this resource. We did want to highlight again that we're having the second part of this webinar, which is Engage with the Sandbox, which is going to be on Wednesday, same time. And this is going to go into a little bit more depth in terms of contributing the sandbox, making those decisions about, you know, licensing and tagging your materials and that kind of stuff so that things can be found. Talk a little bit about how you might use the sandbox in terms of your like tenure and promotion arguments. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we encourage you all to attend that webinar as well. And we'll put the link to that in the chat as well.
So there was a question about the video that we showed, whether like where you can find that. And it's actually not completed yet, like, or finalized yet. We're going to be getting that out soon, but it's not ready for, you know, everybody to look at right now. So I apologize for that. And there was a question about if there's a way to filter by year uploaded. And I think it's automatically newest to latest, right? I think that's how it shows up when you search. Yeah. And there was a link to a survey in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and just click on that and take the survey for the Sandbox, it'll help us plan webinars in the future.
And I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to share the link to the slides so that everyone should be able to access those. So I'm just going to stop sharing here for a second. Let me get those slide links. All right, hopefully those should be the links to the slide for everyone. Just put those in the chat. We have the survey link in there as well. And here is the link to register for the upcoming webinar if you have not had a chance to do that yet. So we'll put that in there as well. So please let us know if those links are not working, but hopefully that should take you to the slides and should take you to the registration for the webinar on Wednesday. Were there any other links that we did not share? I think we did. Okay, so did anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts that they would like to share related to the Sandbox?
I hope it's okay. I just went ahead and unmuted myself. Is there a way to, besides reaching out to administrators, like knowing that this is going to be redesigned and y'all are thinking about that? It's super exciting. I just wonder if there's any place where we could go and say like, hey, here, I have an idea. I don't know, like how's everyone soliciting ideas?
That is a really great question. At this moment, I don't think we have any specific feedback mechanism. So I think the best thing would be to just use that email and email the site administrators with any ideas that you have.
Great, thank you.
So Antessa has added in the chat, yes, please send your ideas to acrlsandbox@gmail.com. Other questions, comments, thoughts that anyone would like to share, please feel free to unmute or to put your questions in the chat as well. Well, I think in that case, Renee and I will stick around for a few minutes to see if there are any other questions that folks have. But I want to thank everyone for being here today. I hope you learned a little bit about the Sandbox, and we hope to see more resources being updated to the uploaded to the Sandbox. We hope that you are using the Sandbox going forward. And if any questions, comments, or thoughts come up, please go ahead and use that email that Tessa shared, acrlsandbox@gmail.com. And Renee, any last thoughts you would like to share?
No, just thank you everybody for attending, and hopefully you got some great information, and hopefully you'll join us on Wednesday.
For all your efforts. Very exciting. I'm going to head out, but see you all on Wednesday.
So I think unless we have any last questions, I think we are ready to wrap it up. And yeah, we'll go ahead. I think it's fine to go ahead and end the recording.